Do atheists fail to do our research? Well, obviously not, because that's mostly what we do. We don't just stick our noses in a book of primitive mythology, we actually explore the real world, and we find that, invariably, everything in these ridiculous holy books, it's all a load of bunk. But the religious are really good at believing that, aren't they? Because they don't care about the truth. So here's one more example. Hope you enjoy. Today, we're going to go and revisit Inspector Gadfly for part 3 of his series on what he thinks atheists do wrong. Except this time, we're going to see that everything that's gone wrong, it's all been him. And I don't want to spoil anything, but this may be the single most idiotic video that we've ever done on YouTube, and that's actually saying quite a bit. So, without further ado, off we go.
Science has shown that there was no global flood. Scary? Let me take you on a little trip.
Why would the truth be scary? Because this is really where I see the religious taking all leave of their senses completely. Who cares if reality is scary? It only matters if it's real. How you feel about anything means absolutely nothing to demonstrable truth. And of course, these people just don't care, do they? And I doubt that this video is going to show that Inspector Gadfly gives a damn either, but let's see.
Before we start, you probably noticed that you are listening to an AI voice. Watch this video to learn why.
Nobody cares. Playing for sympathy doesn't get you anywhere, sorry. Besides, there are tons and tons and tons of videos out there run through a voice synthesizer. Big deal. People who don't have medical problems, they still do it. It's what you say that matters, not what program that you use to say it. So you can stop apologizing for this in every video. We don't give a damn. Knock it off.
My church taught me how the world was made. It was different from what my elementary, junior, and high schools taught. I had to know why.
And because it appealed to you on an emotional level, you just chose to believe your church instead of the actual evidence that comes from legitimate science. You weren't concerned enough to follow the demonstrable evidence to any kind of intelligent, rational conclusion. It was all fee-fees and faith, and zero desire to accept actual reality because it's actually true. Is anybody really surprised by this? I mean, seriously, is this any kind of a surprise? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because as far as my magic 8-ball is concerned, signs point to no.
It was time to go to college. One of my goals was to find out why. The answer leaves me scratching my head even now, 40 years later, with 2 PhDs under my belt.
Yeah, sorry, but I don't buy it. Now, I'm not calling him a liar per se, but come on, this is the 3rd video that we've done, and he absolutely doesn't sound like someone who can even get a sentence out coherently, much less someone who has advanced degrees. Or maybe he's gotten degrees in entirely unrelated subjects, I don't know. I mean, a PhD in underwater basket weaving doesn't actually mean much, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. I can only go by the evidence, and the evidence that I've seen doesn't say that's what's happening.
The journey started out with no worries. After all, Jesus said that the truth would set me free.
Free from caring about reality? Well, obviously, because that's really the only thing that religion, any religion, can offer. It's meant to appeal to your emotions, not to your intellect. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who are all too willing to fall for it, hand over their money to the churches, and wander around in a perpetual haze of dopamine addiction because it gives them the occasional good feeling in the head and a sense of purpose that isn't actually real. It's no wonder why these people are so confused. It's also no wonder why they don't pay attention when we point it out.
In no time, I was terrified. I went to college to study biblical archaeology.
Hey, what'd I tell you? When you pollute your brain with this ridiculous nonsense, it's no wonder that you wind up as screwed up as Inspector Gadfly here obviously is. So, he went to what I'm guessing is a religious school to study a nonsensical subject, and he got a degree that means about as much as a PhD in Hansel and Gretel. Is this supposed to impress anyone? Because I don't see why. I think this just explains a lot.
Archaeology is a branch of anthropology. I certainly did not expect to hear about Adam and Eve, because it was a state university. However, the human race began with more than two individuals, and humanity started in Africa, and not Iraq, the traditional site of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, I'm sorry. State universities, assuming I believe he went at all, they don't offer degree programs in biblical archaeology. In fact, I went and looked, and I couldn't find any non-religious college out there that offered any degree program in biblical archaeology whatsoever. You've got Wheaton College in Illinois, you've got Colorado Christian University, and you've got Trinity Southwest University, just to name a few of the top results. Absolutely nowhere did I find a single result from any kind of non-religious college. Not one. And that's not exactly a surprise.
I couldn't take it anymore. Fortunately, I thought my major required a course in historical geology, fossils, and whatnot. It was my chance to stop worrying about the origin of mankind.
Sure, stop worrying about the facts and dive into believing unsupported crap in the Bible. I mean, seriously, Gadfly, is this supposed to be impressive to atheists? Remember, we're talking about atheists here, not the religious people that you're counting on to watch your videos. But is this supposed to be impressive, or are you actively trying to make a complete fool of yourself? Because let's review real quick if we can. He started off with a belief system which wasn't justified by logic, reason, or evidence, because he had this pre-existing faith that he really wanted to be true. He rejected everything that he learned, including all of the best supported ideas of science, because it didn't match up with the idiocy in his stupid book. Then, when he saw a chance to sidestep all of the problematic differences his beliefs had with reality, he took it. Like that somehow makes all of the problems just go away. And he thinks there's something wrong with us. I mean, these are supposed to be the biggest mistakes made by atheists. And so far, he's only shown just how badly screwed up he is. Is anybody surprised by that? I know I'm not.
I switched majors from anthropology to geology. No worries.
Well, I hate to tell you that geology won't get you anywhere either, because flood geology is every bit as laughable as creationism. I don't care how much you try to get to your ridiculous beliefs. You're not going to get there through anything remotely resembling reality. Trust me, I can disassemble any claims about your farcical flood just as fast as I can any other religious claims about the origin of the universe, etc., etc. You're not helping your case. Not one bit. In fact, you're just proving what a complete imbecile you are. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's really what this is all about. Maybe this is all just a giant cry for help.
There was a global flood, and the world started over with 8 individuals anyway. Everything was okay. Not so fast. I pulled the trigger too soon.
Right. You didn't realize that your beliefs were absolute bunk. Of course, you won't acknowledge that because you only care about your fee-fees. That's very clear from all of the videos that you've made so far. But this is the same kind of thing that we see from lots and lots of crazy theists. They need that feel-good dopamine drip in the brain, so they'll believe absolutely anything, no matter how stupid and unsupported it is. Then they can't figure out why everybody around them is laughing at them. Go figure.
Yes, I avoided hearing that aid was not enough, but, according to geologists, there is no evidence of a global flood. Looking at fossils meant seeing, for myself, that the world was not the world that my church taught. All life did not spring forth at the same time. Fortunately, again, other courses took my mind off the problem that the Bible was not matching the real world.
And he continued to cling desperately to the stupidity in his book and in his head because, fifis. This is hardly the first time that we've heard this from a theist, you notice. These people get so close to the truth, and then they just wander off into la-la land because they just don't give a damn. They're just not concerned if the things that they believe are at all representative of the real world in which they live. And while I'm thinking about it, wasn't this video supposed to be about things that atheists do wrong, not the crap that Inspector Gadfly screwed up on? Why is that? Because he's trying to accuse us of doing no research when the only thing that he talks about is himself, refusing to open his eyes and examine the real evidence. Because, of course he is.
As a geologist, or at least as someone who believes what smart people tell you, you know that there is no global unconformity, which would be evidence of a global flooding event. You might know the 4 unconformities. 1. Disconformity. 2. Paraconformity. 3. Angular unconformity. And 4. Nonconformity. So, there is no evidence for a global flood.
That's the first thing that he's gotten right so far. Now, I don't think he's going to take it seriously because fifis outweigh facts every single time in the mind of a theist. Because this is the kind of thing that ought to take you right out of religion. It ought to make you want to be an atheist. That's actually what made me an atheist once upon a time. I looked to see if the Bible stood up to any critical scrutiny, and lo and behold, it didn't. Yet people like Gadfly here, they just don't care. It doesn't matter. The facts are too scary to deal with, so they just rely on their emotions. They'll just keep on believing regardless of what the facts show, because they just don't care.
Scholars have pointed out that Noah's flood is very similar to other contemporary flood stories, particularly the Epic of Gilgamesh. At first, that was really scary.
Really, why do you keep having these absurd emotional reactions to reality? The simple fact is, the biblical flood narrative isn't remotely original. We see great commonalities among traditions from Mesopotamia, India, and Africa that existed long before the Hebrews were even a thing. It was borrowed, or more aptly, stolen, just like most things in the Bible. And this is why faith doesn't actually get you anywhere useful. It keeps you from understanding what's actually going on.
Then things started to make sense to me. It is important to establish that the Bible is God's Word.
Really? Why? Shouldn't you want to establish the truth? All right, you don't actually care about that, do you? You're just going to go with your faith, no matter how asinine and idiotic your faith happens to be, because you don't actually give a damn, do you? And this is a massive problem for the religious, but they've been so brainwashed in their indoctrination that they simply don't care anymore. This isn't something that atheists are doing wrong. It's exposing the gross failures of religion, all of the things that the theists are doing wrong, but they don't want to hear about that. And that's just sad that he can't see that he's the one with all of the problems. I mean, really, what a dumbass.
A proper understanding of the Bible is essential. God told the ancient Jews a story that they understood. If we exchange something that is in the Bible with something that is not there but it ought to be there, we are risking everything.
Yeah, says you. Now, how about you back up any of that with more than your absurd wishful thinking? You know, can you actually come up with objectively verifiable evidence for any of it? And of course he can't, because he just doesn't care. He isn't remotely concerned that the crap in his book doesn't match demonstrable reality one whit. So long as he gets to feel good and tell himself comforting stories in his head, that's all that matters. Except it doesn't. And it's why these people are so absurd.
Maybe distorting God's message to us. We may be preventing people from hearing the gospel. I cannot tell you how many stories I've heard where someone rejects the gospel because they could no longer believe something in the Bible that is not there. Others profess to believe something that, in their heart of hearts, they do not believe.
Why is he talking faster and faster? Is he trying to get something out before people click away from his video in disgust? I mean, I'm kind of committed here. I mean, maybe really, after all the things I've watched, but I'm kind of stuck because I'm making a video response, but I can't imagine anyone else who might have remained up to this point unless they're strapped to a chair, being forced to watch this as torture. This video has only had 37 views as of when I'm making this, which probably tells you quite a bit. It tells you that not only is Gadfly here completely out of his mind, but he's also grossly unpopular. And that's why he sits at 4, count them, 4 subscribers. That's it. Because everybody else thinks he's crazy. And everybody else is absolutely right.
I kept a lot of things to myself. One of those things is that there is no geological evidence for a global flood. At the same time, I became convinced that I cannot lose my salvation. If you have it, you can't lose it. If you lost it, you never had it.
Dude, you're delusional. There is no reason to think that there's any such thing as salvation to begin with. Salvation from what? Demonstrably. I'm talking demonstrably. What can you prove that we need to be saved from? Because here we see once again that he's letting his faith get in the way of reality because screw reality, right? These people are complete Looney Tunes. If he popped up next and told us that he was, I don't know, Tinkerbell, would anybody really be surprised?
Once again, I can examine my question without worrying about losing my salvation. Consider the problem of not researching a culture. You might miss out on truth. As an anthropologist, you know about the ancient flood stories recorded by several cultures. So, some flooding event or events linked to these stories.
Yeah, except as he slows his tempo down again, we can prove him wrong once again. There are lots and lots and lots of flood stories out there. And you want to know where they're located? Almost without exception, on waterways or in floodplains or in areas that have had routine contact with those that regularly got flooding. Anyone inland, anyone not on a major river or where flooding wasn't commonplace, those cultures, they didn't have flood traditions. Why? Because there was no flood. And Gadfly would know this if he did some actual independent research, but he can't risk his supposed salvation, can he? Therefore, he doesn't bother. And then he accuses us of not doing research, because of course he does.
If that is true, and if it is true that Genesis recounts a worldwide deluge, I can think of only 2 solutions.
And why would you think that Genesis did anything of the sort? Oh, right, he just wants it to be true. He hasn't done any kind of research on his own. He's never looked into it. He's never actually thought about it. He just likes the idea. Yeah. Well, you've actually got to prove it, not just assert it baldly, but that's all you can do. And this is just how religion works. I want it to be true, so it's true, so there. But that's utterly childish, just like, Inspector Gadfly.
One is absolutely unacceptable. The Bible has errors in it.
Why is that unacceptable when it's the only real solution that makes any kind of sense? Oh right, your fifis, I forgot. And this is why he's convinced that we're wrong, because we aren't coddling his childish emotions. I don't know that I've ever seen someone make such a complete fool of themselves as this guy has. Am I missing something here? Is he actually some kind of a super genius and I'm just not seeing it? Somebody, please explain.
The other is that ancient Jews were masters of hyperbole. It turns out that literary scholars ranging from atheists to conservative Christians take that position. Why say that a big flood was the greatest flood ever? Because God is so majestic. That explains so much.
Wait, what? It explains nothing. It's just clinging to your idiotic beliefs because you really want them to be true, and then reinterpreting everything when your beliefs turn out to be nonsense. You are a complete wackaloon, Gadfly. You really need to seek some professional help.
That leads to the next video, but let's finish this one. I studied science, but Noah's flood is not a matter of science. I wish that I had known.
It's a matter of stupidity because that's what it takes to believe any of this. I really wish you had a clue, Gadfly. I really do. You're just embarrassing yourself, and every second that this video goes on, you're just proving yourself to be dumber still. Faith over facts doesn't get you anywhere useful. Please, for the sake of humanity, grow the hell up.
It is a matter of literature. Because there is no evidence for the existence of a great flood does not mean that there is no great God. It does mean that we should study similar other literature.
Sure, because that's not true either. But he just doesn't care. And you notice that absolutely nowhere in this entire video did he ever show that atheists, well, he never showed that atheists did anything. He just proved conclusively what a complete dumbass he is and how desperate he is to remain with his blind theological beliefs. It isn't often that we find such a prime example of everything that the religious do wrong, but there you go. I just can't be wrong. Yeah, but you are. Your feelings aren't getting you anywhere. You're just making a complete fool of yourself, and the world isn't laughing with you. They're laughing at you. This might be the single most idiotic theist video that I've ever looked at in my life, and there's still one more to go. They don't seem to be getting any better. They're all getting much worse. Now, place your bets in the comments if you think the trend is going to continue, or if you think next time he's just going to magically get better. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Because after watching these three, I'm suddenly not looking forward to the last video in the series. I'm actually struggling not to comment on this before my response comes out because this guy is a coward and he tends to take them down the second that anyone disagrees. So place your bets and we'll see how it goes. Because I'm really not holding out any hope of improvement. He's just too dumb.
Boom, dicky, 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 boom.